our desired future, a future where people are safer, healthier, and more prepared to adapt to concurrent changes so that we can seize the opportunities and thrive and prosper. We ask you this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay,
Present.
Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon,
Present.
Gatchalian,
Present.
Go, Gordon, Ontiveros,
Present.
Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan,
Present.
Pimentel III, Po,
Present.
Recto, Revilla,
Present.
Tino,
Present.
Villanueva, Villar,
Present.
Zubiri. The Senate President Soto III is present.
Ma'am, Myra, present ako.
Present too.
I'm present as well.
Committee Secretary, present. Paano na nila?
21. With 6 senators physically present and 14 senators virtually present for a total of 20, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 24th session, October 14, 2020, October 15, 2020, and November 9, 2020, and consider the same as approved. Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The journal is approved.
May I move for the reference of business, Mr. President? We proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate number 1895, entitled An Act Establishing a Green Public Procurement Program for All Branches of Government, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Future Thinking, and Finance.
Senate number 1896, an act institutionalizing the One Town, One Product Philippines program, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Trade, Local Government, and Finance.
Senate number 1897, an act appropriating additional budgetary support to local government units by realigning the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority share in the Internal Revenue Allotment, amending for this purpose Article 10 of Republic Act number 7924, otherwise known as an act creating the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, defining its powers and functions, providing funding therefore and for other purposes to faithfully comply with the constitutional mandate to ensure the autonomy of local governments, introduced by Senator De Lima.
To the Committees on Local Government and Finance.
Senate number 1898, an act promoting entrepreneurship and livelihood in 4Ps, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 11310, otherwise known as an act institutionalizing the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program, 4Ps, introduced by Senator De Lima.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Trade, and Finance.
Senate number 1899, an act increasing the compulsory age of retirement for officers and non-officers of the Philippine National Police from 56 years old to 60 years old, amending for the purpose Section 39 of Republic Act number 6975, otherwise known as the Department of Interior and Local Government Act of 1990, introduced by Senator De Lima.
To the Committees on Public Order and Local Government.
Senate number 1900, an act establishing a regular district office of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, LTFRB, in the city of Bacoor, province of Cavite, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Public Services and Finance.
Senate number 1901, an act establishing an integrated school in Ciudad de Strike in Barangay Molino 1, city of Bacoor, province of Cavite, to be known as Ciudad de Strike Integrated School, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate number 1902, an act to promote and enhance the doubling of income of farmers, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate Number 1903, an act rationalizing land registration, broadening for the purpose the powers and functions of the Land Registration Authority, and reorganizing and renaming it as the Property Registration and Adjudication Commission, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree Number 1529 and other related laws, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Justice, Civil Service, and Finance.
Senate Number 1904, an act declaring the 9th of August as National Indigenous Peoples Day, a special non-working holiday, and the month of August as National Indigenous Peoples Month, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Constitutional Amendments and Cultural Communities.
Senate Number 1905, an act amending Republic Act Number 10175, otherwise known as the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Science and Technology.
Senate Number 1906, an act amending sections 19 and 20 of Republic Act Number 4566, entitled An Act Creating the Philippine Licensing Board for Contractors, prescribing its powers, duties, and functions, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committee on Civil Service.
Committee report. Committee report number 134, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, Ways and Means, Finance, and Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality on Senate number 1907 with Senators Lapid, Cayetano, Gatchalian, Angara, Villar, Villanueva, Revilla Jr., Zubiri, Binay, and Ontiveros as authors thereof, entitled An Act Instituting Services and Programs for Learners with Disabilities in Support of Inclusive Education, establishing inclusive learning resource centers for learners with disabilities in all municipalities and cities, providing for standards, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 55, 69, 171, 329, 338, 345, 434, 540, 804, and 1150, sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business. There is additional reference to business.
Additional reference to business committee reports. Committee report number 135, submitted by the Committee on Finance, and House number 7727, introduced by Representative Yap et al., entitled An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2021, and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsor Senators Angara, Villar, Lacson, Cayetano, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Marcos, Villanueva, Poe, and all the members of the Committee on Finance.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 136, submitted by the Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and House number 1531, introduced by Representative Salceda et al., entitled An Act Changing the Name of Pag-asa National High School in Barangay Rawi, City of Legazpi, Province of Albay, to Legazpi City National High School, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 137, submitted by the Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and House number 1533, introduced by Representative Salceda et al., entitled An Act Changing the Name of Ilawod National High School in Barangay Ilawod, Municipality of Camalig, Province of Albay, to Camalig National High School, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 138, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance, and House number 5741, introduced by Representative Dalog et al., titled An Act Separating the Ginsada National High School, Mayag Extension in Barangay Mayag, Municipality of Bauco, Mountain Province from the Ginsada National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Mayag National High School, and appropriate funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 139, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance, and House number 5742, introduced by Representative Dalog et al., an act separating the Lubon National High School, Mabalite Extension in Barangay Mabalite, Municipality of Tadian, Mountain Province, from the Lubon National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Mabalite National High School, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 140, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance, and House number 5743, introduced by Representative Dalog et al., entitled An Act Separating the Dalanao Elementary School, the Burab Dalanao Extension in Barangay Bacari, Municipality of Paracelis, Mountain Province, from the Dalanao Elementary School, converting it to an independent elementary school to be known as Welly Maclinic Elementary School, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 141, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance on House Number 5744, introduced by Representative Lim Kai Chang et al., entitled An Act Establishing a Separate Schools Division Office in the City of Canlaon, Province of Negros Oriental, amending for the purpose Section 86 of Republic Act Number 3445, entitled An Act Creating the City of Canlaon, recommending its approval with amendment, sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 142, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance on House Number 5872, introduced by Representative Dalag et al., entitled An Act Separating the Ginaang National High School, Mainit Extension in Barangay Mainit, Municipality of Bontoc, Mountain Province, from the Ginaang National High School, converting it into Independent National High School to be known as Mainit National High School, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 143, submitted jointly by the Committees on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance on House Number 5740, introduced by Representative Mangawang et al., entitled An Act Separating the Tabuk City National High School Bantay Extension in Barangay Bantay, Tabuk City, Province of Kalinga, from the Tabuk City National High School, converting it into Independent National High School to be known as Bantay National High School, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate Number 1573, sponsor Senator Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of my dear colleagues, we just shift the agenda, if they wouldn't mind. We will start off with the budget of the General Appropriations Act sponsorship, and then after which will be the speech of our dear colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros, and then sponsorship of the resolution of Senator Coco Pimentel, and then the rest of the agenda to follow after that. So, Mr. President, with my permission of our dear colleagues, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order House Bill number 7727 under Committee Report number 135. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move to consider House Bill number 7727 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none, so considered. Secretary will read the title of the measure.
House Bill Number 7727, an act appropriating funds for the operation of the government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2021, and for other purposes.
Majority Leader.
May we recognize, Mr. President, our distinguished sponsor, the Chair of the Committee on Finance of the Senate, no other than Senator Sonny Angara.
Senator Sonny Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader, dear colleagues. A very good afternoon to all. Mr. President, once again, we sponsor in this august chamber the General Appropriations Act, more commonly known as the Annual National Budget. The national budget has long been considered among the most important legislative measures Congress is tasked to pass every year. But it is even more critical now during this time of global and national crisis. For our people face disease, calamity, economic slowdown, and social upheaval. And they are looking for a path out of what is nothing less than the greatest humanitarian struggle our nation has faced in recent history. We believe that the budget can shine a light on that path. Hindi lamang pondo kasi ang nilalaman ng panukala natin ito, napapaloob dito ang pinakastratehiya ng gobyerno para tumugon sa pandemyang COVID-19, tulungan ang mga nasalanta ng kalamidad at ipagpatuloy ang trabaho para matupad ang ating ambisyon na maging mas ligtas, mas maunlad, at mas masagana ang minamahal nating bansa. Sa budget na ito, nakabalangkas ang ating pagbangon kung saan natuldukan na ang pangamba dulot ng pandemya at muling umaandar ang mga makina ng ating ekonomiya. Naniniwala po kami na handa ang ating gobyerno at ang ating Pangulo na magtrabaho at gawin ang lahat para tumayo muli ang ating bansa. Before we move forward, we need to take stock of the crisis we are in and of all the macroeconomic assumptions of this budget. It is the microscopic that looms the largest. Although invisible to the naked eye, the damages COVID-19 has wrought are there for everyone to see. They're not in the fine print of a bureaucrat's report or a graph in his PowerPoint presentation. They are in shuttered factories, empty hotels, and closed restaurants. In the exodus of jobless OFWs, of furloughed breadwinners, in the outstretched arms of jeepney drivers receiving alms and not fares. They are in deserted public schools with 4 million fewer learners, in jam-packed wards of government hospitals where lack of equipment is a pre-existing comorbidity, in people lining up for hours for help or ayuda they have waited on for months. COVID-19 is the proverbial elephant in the national living room, and in the national budget space, we should create to ease the pain it has caused. In truth, there is a Philippine Statistics Authority statistic for every industry which the pandemic has cratered. Construction has sunk nearly 40% this third quarter, but its impact is more vivid in work sites abandoned by workers who walked under the sun and the stars to return home empty-handed to their families in the provinces. Transport and storage has plunged nearly 30%, but what better picture of a grounded nation than buses and trains ferrying only half their capacity, and of airports that land fewer flights or none at all. Accommodation and food service activities have shrunk 53%, which we, in this footloose and foodie nation, as we know very well, the lockdown has led to a dine-in staycation at home experience. The truth is, and we have heard it during the hearings we and the various vice chairs have conducted, is that we can quantify the ravages of the pandemic on livelihoods, but no metric can fully capture the suffering it has caused on the lives of our people. Mr. President, the parliamentary tradition in sponsoring the General Appropriations Bill is to tout its macroeconomic moorings, but COVID-19 is today's greatest red tagger. It has put in the red the numbers that matter, that revisiting them only affirms the virus's corrosive properties. For example, we often use as a parameter the price of Dubai crude oil. But at whatever price that is, if people will not leave their homes and gas up their cars, it will still leave our fiscal tank half empty. Employment is another indication, but today it captures not the increase, but the hemorrhage of jobs, which per last official PSA count was 4.6 million jobless. GDP, or gross domestic product, Mr. President, the headline macroeconomic assumption, is another COVID hit entity. The difference between our pre-COVID forecast for 2020 and the adjusted forecast as of the latest DBCC meeting is more or less 2.261 trillion pesos. Recent NEDA figures show that our economy continued its double-digit contraction this third quarter at negative 11.5%, with household consumption among the biggest contributors to the decline. In fact, in this pandemic, our people's confidence in their own economy is perhaps the hardest hit and the most in need of reviving. With private economic activity down more than ever, it is necessary for government to fill the vacuum and stimulate demand. Government must lead and exude the confidence that the Philippines can recover and bounce back. That's where this budget is perhaps most critical, as a wellspring of trust, confidence, and hope in the midst of worldwide uncertainty. Unfortunately, there is no manual on how to defeat the virus. There is no playbook on how to do pandemic budgeting to pull off the shelf. But I do believe, Mr. President, that the Senate is up to the difficult job at hand. Just as we did when we passed the Bayanihan Laws 1 and 2, led by our Senate leadership, Senate President Soto, Senate Pro Temp Ralph Recto, Majority Leader Mig Subiri, Minority Leader Frank Drilon, and Senator Pia Cayetano when this representation was hit by COVID-19. Even when resources are few, demand is great, and the stakes have never been higher. We can craft and enact on time a national budget that in the midst of the pandemic will heal the sick, help the affected, and most importantly, fund the hopes of a people whose obedience to government rules, from mask wearing to the longest lockdown, remain unparalleled in the world. We are thankful to the House of Representatives, to newly elected Speaker Velasco, and our counterpart Appropriations Chair Yap for transmitting within a reasonable time frame their version of the budget, the General Appropriations Bill. The House's action has given us in the Senate adequate opportunity to closely review and assess the government's planned expenditures for the coming year. Even with the intense time pressure, I am confident that what we are presenting today is a product of careful and collegial deliberation, and that it truly embodies a strategy for our country to recover and to get back on its track to prosperity. Taus-puso po akong nagpapasalamat, Mr. President, sa 10 Vice Chair ng ating komite, sila Senadora Cayetano, Gatchalian, Senators Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Marcos, Poe, Villanueva, and Villar. Napakalaki po ang tulong nila para masiyasat ng maigi ang panukalang budget at masigurado na papupunta sa tamang programa at proyekto ang pondo ng sambayanang Pilipino. Salamat po sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado, sa kanilang mga staff, at lalo na sa Legislative Budget Research and Monitoring Office or LBRMO na sa kabila ng banta ng COVID-19 ay patuloy na pumapasok po sa opisina, tiniis po ang hirap ng social distancing at ng mga safety protocols, pati na rin ng puyat. At hinanda po nilang dokumento na gagamitin para sa parating na mga debate. Mr. President, 4.506 trillion ang kabuang budget para sa 2021 na nilalatag ng ating committee report kasama ang 3.263 trillion na new appropriations at 1.419 trillion na automatic appropriations. Some of the administration's flagship initiatives shall remain, including cash grants under the 4Ps and infrastructure projects under the Build, Build, Build. Significant amounts will also go to the different agencies under the umbrella of the Balik Probinsya, the brainchild of our colleague, Vice Chair Senator Bongo, meant to spur growth and development in the provinces, entice our people to return to their hometowns, and decongest our urban centers like Metro Manila. Key to our recovery is our response to the pandemic itself, particularly the challenges it poses to the health of our people. Much has already been invested by virtue of Bayanihan Laws 1 and 2 into improving our healthcare institutions and protecting our frontliners. So for 2021, we aim to build on the gains we have made. Up to 16.6 billion will be allocated for the DOH, or Department of Health's Human Resources for Health, or HRH program, to hire and pay the salaries and benefits of even more medical frontliners, the brave men and women who are constantly called to risk their lives to treat the sick, including those stricken with COVID-19, and to prevent any more unnecessary deaths. Some 2.7 billion will also be allotted to purchase the personal protective equipment, or PPEs, that they will use in the line of duty. Hopefully, with these outlays, none of our frontliners will have to needlessly endanger their lives to save others. The government will also direct significant amounts towards improving healthcare facilities in areas where a large number of poor households reside, and providing some health facilities with adequate medical equipment, laboratories, and isolation units. And upon the recommendation of our vice chairs, Cayetano, Marcos, and Go, the Senate will augment this effort and increase the allocation for the Health Department's Health Facilities Enhancement Program, or HFEP. We laud our counterparts in the House for raising the allocation set aside to purchase COVID-19 vaccines as soon as one is developed within the year 2021, to the tune of 5.5 billion in the General Appropriations Bill, or GAB. To ensure that more Filipinos will receive this vaccine once it is available, the Committee on Finance has also set aside 10 billion in unprogrammed appropriations for the sole purpose of purchasing COVID-19 vaccines. While waiting for the vaccine, we need to remain vigilant, Mr. President. The government will continue testing for the virus, purchasing gene expert cartridges and COVID-19 testing kits, reagents, and other necessary supplies, funds for which your committee has increased. Kinikilala din po namin na bagaman kailangan rumisponde agad sa COVID-19, dapat patuloy ang pagtugon sa iba pang karamdaman ng ating mga kababayan, Mr. President. Kaya mananatili sa aming committee report ang dinagdag na 300 million ng Kamara para sa mental health program ng DOH. Ito ay mahalaga, lalo na sa panahon ng mga community quarantine, tumataas ang bilang ng mga taong humihingi ng saklolo para sa kanilang karamdaman at sa kanilang pag-iisip for mental health, Mr. President. We also recognize that the pandemic is particularly difficult on those stricken with other serious diseases such as cancer. We've received reports, for instance, of cancer patients missing out on months' worth of their treatments due to the community quarantines. This is why your committee has set aside a significant amount of 1 billion pesos for a cancer assistance fund and for cancer medicines for children, as recommended by Vice Chairs Senators Bongo and Senator Pia Cayetano. Such funding should be seen as among the first steps the country is taking to implement the recently passed Integrated Cancer Control Act. Indeed, when our sick cannot get the treatment they need, the treatment should go to them. Upon the initiative of Vice Chair Marcos and this representation, funds were also added to the DOH for a complementary feeding program to combat malnutrition, especially among our children, for initiatives that care for pregnant teenagers and adolescent mothers, and for the prevention and control of communicable diseases like tuberculosis. Patuloy pa ding popondohan ang National Health Insurance Program o PhilHealth upang magkaroon ng health insurance ang bawat Pilipino. Ngunit mananatiling mapagmatsyag ang Senado, led by our Senate President and Senator Lacson, para masigurado na tunay na mapupunta ang pondo ng bayan para sa kalusugan ng bayan. Patuloy rin magkakaroon ng tulong pinansyal sa mga mahihirap na pasyente sa iba't ibang government hospitals. Makakaasa naman po tayo na handa ang ating gobyerno para tulungan ang ating mga kababayan na nahihirapan. Kasama po dito ang mga nawalan ng trabaho, ang mga OFWs na napilitang bumalik sa Pilipinas, at ang mga pamilyang nasalanta dahil sa bagyo at ibang kalamidad. Sa ilalim po ng DSWD or Department of Social Welfare and Development, patuloy pa rin ang pagpopondo natin sa Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program or 4Ps na naisabatas na po, at ang target ay mabigyan ng cash grant ang aabot sa lampas 4 million na pamilya. Meron pa ring social pension sa ating mga seniors bilang tulong pantustos sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na gastusin. Yung pondong ilalaan na dinagdagan natin nila Vice Chair Risa Hontiveros ay para sa 3.8 million na mga lolo at lola. Nandiyan din ang assistance to individuals in crisis situations, tulong medikal, panlibing, education, food at non-food para sa mga pamilyang nasalanta ng kalamidad o na-displaced dahil sa armadong labanan. Sa mungkahi muli ni Vice Chair Hontiveros, may pondo rin para sa supplementary feeding program para madagdagan ang mga batang pinapakain ng mga daycare centers ng bansa. Alinsunod din po sa advokasya ni na Vice Chair Senator Grace Poe at Senator Nancy Binay. The DSWD will also continue with its initiatives towards community empowerment. For one, it will continue with its Sustainable Livelihood Program, which will aid marginalized households through skills training, pre-employment assistance, and financial assistance for seed capital. Throughout the pandemic, many households have had to find new sources of income, so we hope this initiative expands their chances of success. Alinsunod din sa rekomendasyon ni Vice Chair Marcos, dadagdagan din natin ang pondo para sa Kalahi Seeds, Kapangyarihan at Kaunlaran sa Bayan KKB, kung saan ang mga community beneficiaries mismo ang pwedeng magpanukala kung anong proyekto ang dapat patakbuhin para sa kanila. Para naman sa mga nasalanta ng kalamidad tulad ng mga kababayan natin sa Bicol Region, dinagdagan ng komite ang NDREAM or National Disaster Risk Reduction Fund. Kapag dinagdag ito sa Quick Response Funds ng iba't ibang ahensya, mas malaki ang nakatabing pondo para sa mga kalamidad para sa 2021 kaysa sa nakaraang taon at sa mga nakaraang taon. Para naman po sa ating mga workers at empleyado, handa ang Department of Labor and Employment o DOLE na tumulong. Sa aksyon po ng ating Labor Chair, Senator Joel Villanueva, maaring umabot sa 2.5 million ang matutulungan sa pamamagitan ng skills training at livelihood assistance under the programs of DOLE. May dagdag din po para sa DOLE Integrated Livelihood Program kung saan makakatanggap ang mga individual beneficiaries ng starter kits at ang mga kasaping MSMEs or micro, small, and medium enterprises ng financial assistance up to 1 million pesos. We also augmented, Mr. President, the budgets for the DOLE's Regular Adjustment Measures Program, which is meant to help displaced formal sector workers tide themselves over before their work resumes or are able to find new employment, as well as the Special Program for the Employment of Students or SPES. Handa rin po ang OWA or Overseas Workers Welfare Administration na tulungan ang ating mga OFWs or Overseas Filipino Workers na kinakailangan umuwi dahil hindi po sila nakapagtrabaho kung saan sila nakadeploy. Dito po sa ating committee report, pinalaki natin ang Emergency Repatriation Fund, again, through the intercession and initiative of Vice Chair Senator Joel Villanueva, para sa cash assistance at iba pang ayuda na inaabot nila sa mga repatriated na OFWs. In a sense, we are glad that many of our countrymen are back home, and through OWA, we want to help them earn a decent living in our shores. Hopefully, many of them will decide to stay. And they're also eligible for the trainings for TESTA, which again was also augmented by our Chair of Higher Education, Senator Joel. Hindi rin po titigil ang gobyerno hanggat bawat pamilyang Pilipino ay nakatira sa disente at ligtas na bahay. Kaya dinagdagan po natin sa rekomendasyon ni Senator Francis Tolentino ang budget ng Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. Si Senator Francis po ay chairman ng Committee on Housing. para maging maayos at mas mapagmalasakit ang mga resettlements na ginagawa ng mga local government units. Madalas reklamo po nila, nililipat na lang po sila sa isang lugar, walang kuryente, walang maayos po na social services. Kaya't nais natin makatulong dito sa sitwasyon ito. Madadagdagan rin po ang pondo para sa resettlement program ng National Housing Authority para sa mga informal settler families na maapektuhan ng mga infrastructure projects ng ating gobyerno. Mr. President, our students and teachers are also among the most adversely affected throughout the pandemic. Hence, we've taken steps to ensure that they are supported throughout the coming year. While the pandemic may have momentarily disrupted our education system, our constitutional commitment to prioritize education remains, given that this sector shall still receive the biggest allocation under the proposed budget. It is unclear when face-to-face classes will resume, so we have increased the budget for the Flexible Learning Options Program of the Department of Education on the initiative of Vice Chairs Cayetano and Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who is also the chair of the Senate Committee on Basic Education. Here, teachers and students are empowered to use other modes of learning, like television, radio, and modules that do not require close contact. We've also augmented the budget for the operation of schools and kept the funding for the department's computerization program, which we believe should take cognizance of Senator Lito Lapid's measure calling on book publishers to allow the scanning and conversion of their textbooks into e-books. In the coming year, Mr. President, our public school teachers are also set to receive some extra benefits, including tokens for the World Teachers Day, and as well as some 910,000 teachers will see their cash allowances raised from 3,500 pesos to 5,000 pesos a year, in line with what we hope will soon be a law, the Teaching Supplies Bill sponsored by Senator Bong Revilla, principally authored by Senator Ralph Recto, as well as this representation, Senator Cayetano, which recently passed on third reading and which is now pending at the House. These extra benefits are but simple extensions of support for our teachers, many of whom have had to rethink how they do their jobs almost overnight. And then, upon the initiative of Vice Chair Senator Grace Poe, the funding for the DepEd school-based feeding program has been increased to boost the nutrition of more of our children and to keep them alert and awake as they learn. Pagdating naman po sa tertiary education, tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang suporta ng gobyerno sa pamamagitan ng pag-implementa ng UACTEA or Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, more commonly known as the Free College Law. Sa susunod na taon, may libreng tuition at ilang mga school fees para sa abot na 1.34 million na college students. Higit sa 850,000 naman ang makatanggap ng Tertiary Education Subsidy or TES. Dinagdagan din po ng inyong komite sa inisyatibo ni Vice Chair Pia Cayetano at Senator Joel Villanueva ang pondo para sa iba't ibang student financial assistance programs. Napakalaki ang mga halagang inilalaan para dito dahil naniniwala kami na hindi dapat maging hadlang ang pandemya sa pag-aaral ng ating mga anak. Malaki rin ang halagang idinagdag sa budget ng iba't ibang state universities and colleges, kasama ang UP, MSU, PUP, among others. We're also making extra investments to strengthen our pipeline of medical professionals, which in the long term shall expand the capacities of our healthcare system in general. In the coming year, we've increased funding for medical scholarships and its allied return service program, in line with the advocacy of Senate President Soto and the sponsor of the recently passed Doktor ng Bayan Act, Senator Joel Villanueva, and started a seed fund for the development of medical schools and SUCs. And upon the initiative of Senators Joel and Senator Pia, funding has also been provided to 8 state universities and colleges offering medical courses to increase their carrying capacity to 30% in the next 4 to 5 years. These include the Mariano Marcos State University, the University of Northern Philippines, Cagayan State University, Bicol University, West Visayas State University, Mindanao State University, the UP College of Medicine, and the UP School of Health Sciences. We have also augmented the budgets of 3 SUCs or state universities and colleges to support them as they wait for their pending application to operate medical schools. These are Cebu Normal University, Western Mindanao State University, and University of Southeastern Philippines in Davao. As for TESDA, significant funding will be in place for its various programs, including its Tulong Trabaho Scholarship, its Training for Work Scholarship, and Special Training for Employment. These programs again, upon the initiative of Senator Joel, will play a big role in reskilling and upskilling our people, many of whom are forced to switch professions and find new sources of livelihood. We hope and trust that they will also be offering more innovative trainings for the jobs of tomorrow. Mr. President, with the pandemic causing what some have described as a great pause throughout the world, the opportunity has arisen to re-examine and reassess our society's priorities. It has become clear that one of the critical things that we have somewhat neglected for a long time is our food security, something that our colleagues, Senators, Vice Chairs Villar, Senator Pangilinan, and Majority Floor Leader Zubiri have long been advocating for. Hopefully, this will change under next year's budget. Sa Department of Agriculture or DA, nagsagawa ang inyong komite ng mga realignments para mabigyan ng mas malaking pondo ang mga proyekto na agad-agad makakatulong sa ating magsasaka at mangingisda. It's noteworthy that agriculture is one of the few sectors that has registered, albeit modest growth, among the different contributors to Philippine GDP. Example, sa pangunguna po ni Vice Chair Villar at Vice Chair Marcos, pinaigting natin ang distribution ng inbred rice seeds at ng hybrid rice seeds sa ilalim ng National Rice Program. May dagdag din po para sa fertilizer distribution para sa mga rice farmers. Pinalaki po natin ang Rice Farmers Financial Assistance. Naglagay din po tayo ng mas maraming pondo para sa mechanization ng mga national banner programs ng DA, tulad ng para sa rice, livestock, corn, high-value crops at organic agriculture. Palalawigin rin ang kadiwa ni Ani at Kita, kung saan ang gobyerno mismo ang magdadala ng produkto ng ating mga magsasaka sa mga Pilipinong bibili nito. Ibig sabihin, hindi na po dadaan sa mga middlemen ang ating mga magsasaka sa ilalim ng programang ito. Kaya mas malaki ang chance na maibebenta nila ang kanilang ani sa disenteng presyo. As restrictions on travel and business activities have been eased, Mr. President, it is time for the government to pump prime and inject energy back into the engines of our economy, as well as make strategic investments that will allow our country to emerge from recession even stronger and even more globally competitive. We take heed of what our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Ralph Recto, has said several times throughout the hearings. We should not let a good crisis go to waste. A decisive step, as I believe our Public Works Committee Chair, Senator Manny Pacquiao, would agree, is the full resumption of the DPWH's construction activities, especially those under Build, 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 with the end view of generating up to 1.1 million direct and indirect jobs for Filipinos throughout the country. Of course, these construction activities will resume with the proper social distancing and safety protocols in place. Some of these projects include the Bonifacio Global City Ortigas Center Link Road Project, the Davao City Coastal Road Project, the Panglao Tagbilaran City Offshore Connector Bridge, among many others. To help ensure this infrastructure drive is inclusive and benefits as many as possible, we've increased funding for the construction and rehabilitation of accessibility facilities like ramps and elevators for physically challenged persons, upon the initiative of our Vice Chair, Senator Grace Poe. The pandemic also made it clear that we needed to invest more in our ICT infrastructure. To the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, upon the recommendation of Vice Chair Senator Ping Lacson, we are augmenting the national broadband program so that several key locations in Luzon can already go online next year, as well as augmenting the free internet Wi-Fi connectivity in public places and state universities and colleges, again, under the initiative of Vice Chair Senator Ping Lacson. We are also empowering the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, to ramp up its ongoing efforts to build more resiliency and competitiveness into our local businesses. For instance, increases are made to the budgets of the department's livelihood seeding program, its shared services facilities, or SSF initiative, and its OTOP, or One Town, One Product, Next Gen project. As our Committee on Trade, Committee on Trade Chairman, Senator Coco Pimentel has repeatedly mentioned, each of these programs should help our MSMEs, who, as he has pointed out, comprise the bulk of our economic enterprises. We've also infused more funds into the Small Business Corporation for their Pondo para sa Pagbabago at Pag-asenso, the low-interest loan facility which has helped many MSMEs throughout the lockdown. As the country recovers, we need to maintain our standing in the international community to project a good image to the rest of the world, and uphold the welfare of our kababayans abroad. That is why, upon the initiative of Vice Chair Senator Dick Gordon, we have increased funding for the Department of Foreign Affairs. Of course, throughout our recovery effort, the need to maintain peace and order remains. This is why, upon the recommendation of Vice Chairs Lacson, Hontiveros, and Senator Bato de la Rosa, we are ensuring more support for our uniformed personnel. Funding for the AFP, which includes the GHQ, the Philippine Army, the Philippine Air Force, and the Philippine Navy, should receive a needed boost thanks to the initiatives of Senators Lacson and de la Rosa. This year, the pandemic has forced us to momentarily shelve some initiatives, including enhancing our capacity to innovate as a nation. With the proposed budget, we wish to pursue some of these efforts again. Among these initiatives is the implementation of the Innovation Act, authored and sponsored by Senator Win Gatchalian, Vice Chair Win Gatchalian, which among others called for an initial infusion and the convening of an innovation council. The DTI has also convened in select areas a handful of regional inclusive innovation clusters aimed at getting regional businesses, academics, and government agencies around the same table to discuss ways to collaborate and spur innovation-driven growth. With the budget we are proposing for the Innovation Fund, we hope that we could finally start taking decisive steps towards a smarter, more innovative Philippines. To further expand our capabilities in research and development, we've significantly increased the funding for the Department of Science and Technology, its attached research councils, the National Research Council of the Philippines, the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, as initiated by Vice Chair Senator Joel Villanueva, as well as Science and Technology Committee Chair Nancy Binay. As a direct response to the pandemic, our budget also includes the seed funding for the establishment of a Virology, Science and Technology Institute of the Philippines, which hopefully one day could become the country's premier facility for studying and controlling viral diseases. Indeed, this is part of our efforts not just to build back after the pandemic, but to build back better, Mr. President. Ang budget nito ay para sa muling pagbangon ng ating bansa. It is difficult, Mr. President, amid the COVID-19 pandemic to balance the needs for further institution building as well as to fund recent laws passed by the Chamber. As mentioned, the Innovation Act. There's also funding in the committee report for the newly passed National Academy of Sports, for the National Integrated Cancer Control Act, for the Free Internet Access Act, for the recently passed Salary Standardization 5, for the Mental Health Act, among other laws, Mr. President. We do not want these laws to become undead or unfunded mandates. So bagaman nananatili ang banta ng COVID-19, hindi po tayo susuko, Mr. President. Hindi tayo papayag na patuloy na mahahadlangan ang ating pag-arangkada patungo sa magandang kinabukasan na ating inaasam-asam. May pag-asa pa rin na may wakas ang ating paghihirap. Many catastrophic calamities may have damaged us this year, from volcano eruptions to strong typhoons. But we know from past experiences that we will endure. We are a resilient people. And with this proposed budget, we hope to build back better and with an eye towards a better future for everyone. The virus is forcing us to practice social distancing today, but it will never keep us from realizing tomorrow some of our greatest aspirations and ambitions for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for our country. What we are presenting today is a work in progress, Mr. President, a committee report. We look forward to working with our Senate colleagues during the forthcoming interpellations and period of amendments, as well as with the House during the bicameral conference to continually improve what we have all crafted through the committee report. And hopefully, Mr. President, whatever shape or form the budget takes, it becomes clear to ourselves and to the rest of the world that after many months of being in lockdown, the Philippines is recovering and ready to get back to work. Though 2020 has found us neck deep in crisis, the 2021 budget we are proposing is our primary way of pulling ourselves out. This is a path out of this pandemic. Hopefully, Mr. President, it is a path towards the bright future we must all work for. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next to sponsor the measure as well is our distinguished colleague, Senator Grace O. If she's
Senator
ready.
Grace Po is recognized.
Is she on the floor, Mr. President? If she's not ready, Mr. President, if she was on the floor, if she's not ready, Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva to sponsor as well.
Senator Joel
Well,
Villanueva
I'm
instead.
actually here. Oh,
Oh.
sorry.
Uh,
Well, okay,
All right,
go ahead,
Senator Grace
Senator
Po is
Joel.
recognized.
Senator Joel.
ladies first, siguro, Mr. President. Senator Grace, are you ready?
I just left a copy of my speech in another table.
Okay.
I'll be right
So,
back.
Mr. President, Senator Joel Villanueva, let me recognize him.
All right, Senator Joel Villanueva instead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues in this chamber, the COVID-19 pandemic has turned our world upside down overnight. With the spread of COVID-19 infection in the country seemingly unabated, thousands of establishments have shut down. The number of jobless Filipinos has doubled to 4.6 million, and thousands of overseas Filipino workers have been displaced from work. The education and health sectors are also severely affected by the pandemic, with the learning of about over 30 million students disrupted, while the health of our frontliners continue to be under threat every single day. Amidst these very challenging times, the Senate has been doing its job with unprecedented speed to craft crucial fiscal measures such as Bayanihan 1 and Bayanihan 2 to save lives and safeguard our economy. Inspirasyon po natin sa Senado ang bilis at liksi ng mga Pilipino innovators na siyang dahilan kaya nakapasok ang Pilipinas sa top 20 Global Coronavirus Innovation Map at rank 50 sa Global Innovation Index kahit sa panahon ng pandemya. Just today, Mr. President, the Philippine Statistics Authority, PSA, shared that the country's GDP recorded a decline of negative 11.5% in the third quarter of 2020 compared to the same period last year. Although it is in double digits, it provides a more positive outlook compared to the economic contraction of negative 16.9% in the second quarter. Kahit paunti-unti, Ginoong Pangulo, makakabalik po tayo sa ating growth and development trajectory. It is with great pleasure that I support the passage of the fiscal year 2020 national budget, which affirms our desire to build back better as a growing nation. I sincerely commend and thank the chair of the Committee on Finance, the hardworking senator of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Angara, who has been instrumental in setting the stage for the country's recovery. With the strong support of our colleagues here, especially led by our Senate President Soto, we are also happy to sponsor a number of amendments to the national budget centered in the areas of employment recovery and reintegration, research and innovation, health and education. The Senate Committee report increases the budget of DOLE, or the Department of Labor and Employment, and its attached agencies by 2.301 billion pesos, increasing the agency's total budget to 33.3 billion. This is crucial to expand assistance to workers affected by the pandemic, offer sustainable livelihood opportunities, match job seekers with job opportunities, improve our skills registry, and to sustain the ongoing emergency repatriation operation and additional assistance extended to the additional displaced OFWs next year. Specifically, Mr. President, we'd like to point out that we propose increase in allocation for TUPAD by 1 billion pesos, adjustment measures program by 200 million, integrated livelihood program of DOLE by 200 million, job assistance program and skills registry system by 20.5 million, and emergency repatriation fund of OWA by 300 million. We are also glad to report that the Senate version augments the budget of the Department of Science and Technology by 1 billion pesos. As shared by our colleagues during the budget deliberations, now is the best time for research and innovation. And the DOST plays an indispensable role in tapping the brightest minds among our countrymen and in finding much-needed solutions to the pandemic. Kahit wala pong natanggap sa Bayanihan at NBC 580 ang DOST, nakakalikha po sila o nakalikha po sila ng medical devices, test kits, PPEs at digital trackers na nakatulong po sa ating COVID-19 response efforts. From our end and as a result of our hearing and inputs coming from Senator Ping Lacson and Chair of Science and Technology, Senator Nancy Binay, we introduced a budget increase of 750 million to boost support research initiatives of the DOST. This is composed of 350 million for research grants in aid in the DOST, Philippine Center for Health Research and Development, Philippine Council for Agriculture, Aquatic and Natural Resources Research and Development, or PICARD, Philippine Council for Industry, Energy and Emerging Technology Research and Development, or PCIEERD, 300 million for community empowerment through science and technology, and 100 million for small enterprise technology upgrading program. Consistent po, Ginoong Pangulo, sa ating objectives in innovation, this representation also pushed for the restoration of 300 million innovation fund with the National Economic and Development Authority, ONEDA, which is crucial to implement Republic Act number 11293, or the Philippine Innovation Act, that our colleagues here in the Senate worked hard to pass last year. With this, we hope to strengthen entrepreneurship and enterprises engaged in developing innovative solutions benefiting the poorest of the poor. For education and training, we are glad to note that the advocacies we have been championing have been well incorporated in the budget of our education institutions. Under the Senate committee report, the budget for TESDA is proposed to increase by 620 million. The budget for CHED, or Commission on Higher Education, is proposed to increase by 1.351 billion, while the budget of state colleges and universities are proposed to increase by 3.046 billion. Thanks again to our Chair, Sani Angara, and Vice Chair, Senator Pia Cayetano. Such budget increase is crucial to help, Mr. President, upskill, retrain, and retool, especially our displaced workers and returning OFWs in our textbook institutions, as well as to ensure the effective delivery of learning in higher education institutions amidst the demands of the new and better normal. Specifically, Mr. President, we propose the additional 300 million for special training for employment program of TESDA and 300 million for training for work scholarship program. We also allotted per state university and college an additional 1 million pesos for their ICT connection and their cultural, sports, and other activities. Again, thanks to Vice Chair Pia Cayetano. We also closely monitor and actively participated in instituting the budgets needed to effectively implement the Doktor para sa Bayan Bill. Specifically, Mr. President, we introduced additional 600 million for the Medical Scholarship and Return Service Program, 350 million as seed fund for the development of medical program in SUCs within the Commission on Higher Education, as well as 450 million to support the additional financial requirements of the 3 state universities and colleges, namely Cebu Normal University, Western Mindanao State University, and University of Southeastern Philippines to open a Doctor of Medicine program in 2021. With this, Mr. President, with these amendments to the national budget for 2021, we seek to promote the welfare of our current and future labor force, which has always been among the greatest strengths of the Philippines. This measure, arguably one of the most important pieces of legislation of Congress in history, because this budget will determine the pace, trajectory of our economic recovery amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Higit po sa lahat, Ginoong Pangulo, ang mga karagdagang pondong ito sa 2021 ang magsisilbing puhunan. Puhunan po natin para palaguin, patatagin, at iangat ang dignidad ng bawat Pilipino na siyang punot dulo ng lahat ng ating adhikain. Maraming salamat po at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Majority Leader.
May we recognize, Mr. President, once again, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, my dear colleagues. In my maiden year as Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance, it is my honor to co-sponsor this committee report on House Bill number 7727, otherwise known as the Proposed General Appropriations Bill for fiscal year 2021. I am proud to be a member of a Senate which did not bend in the face of an unprecedented crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the corresponding fallout on the economy. We immediately passed the landmark Bayanihan 1 and 2 laws. The present 4.5 trillion peso budget for 2021 is the next chapter in our legislative story. I won't delve into the details, which have been ably discussed by our hardworking and intelligent Chairman of Finance, Senator Engara. Instead, I will highlight my humble contributions to the present measure. I thank the Chairman for accepting my proposals. First, we have allotted 5 billion pesos additional as subsidy for displaced public utility vehicle drivers in the form of service contracting. This will enable jeepney and bus drivers to operate while following safety protocols without sacrificing their income. We have also increased the budget of the Civil Aviation Board by 60.81 million and provided a subsidy of 1.53 billion to the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. This is in support of the aviation industry, which has suffered in its own unprecedented plane pandemic due to the freeze in the international tourism. We note that only 1.3 million tourists arrived from January to July 2020, down by 73% compared to the same period last year. For our commuters, we have placed 500 million under the local government support fund for segregated bicycle lanes and footpaths. The latter fund can be also used to build up, rehabilitate public parks, which will help Filipinos who are negative for COVID but positive for cabin fever. We have also included 70 million under the Department of Public Works and Highways for PWD and senior citizen friendly facilities. Finally, we continue to support the DepEd school feeding program with an additional allotment. This may be used as transportation allowance for public schools, which will become padala hubs for packed lunches and learning modules. This is a school-to-stomach fund for learners who are also adjusting to off-campus learning. In summary, Mr. President, this is a budget geared not just to build, but to build back better from this pandemic. It is built upon lessons learned as well as the Filipino people's hopes and aspirations. It is a budget which we can gladly sign with the words, "Hindi namin iniiwan sa ere ang mga Pilipino." Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and we'd like to congratulate our chairperson, Senator Sani Angara, for all the subcommittee hearings that he had handled together with all their vice chairmen, several of them, Mr. President, during the break. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, we move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of House Bill 7727 is hereby suspended.
And just
for
to
the
remind,
record,
yes, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, earlier, when the count was made in the roll call, there were 7 physically present in the session hall, not 6, just to correct that. And thereafter, Senator Marcos was online. But may we suggest to our colleague that next time we will be calling the call of the roll. Those who are virtually present should not just be logged on, but should say that they are present so that the Secretariat is not confused on what to do and what to say and what to place as numbers of those present. Those physically present have no problem at all, but the virtual presence. Anyway, it'll be quite some time before we call again a call of the roll because of the budget that we will be starting tomorrow. For the record, the Minority Leader is recognized. Madam, you're on mute. Minority Leader, you're on mute.
We concur with the rule, with your rule, Mr. President. But may I suggest that those who are on virtual presence who would come in later shall be marked arrived after the roll call, as we do when you are physically present. If you arrive after the roll call, you are not marked absent, but indicate that you arrived after the roll call. That same rule should apply to those of us who would attend virtually. Thank you, Mr.
All
President.
right. We concur. For the record. Thank you. Majority Leader?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We concur also with our Minority Floor Leader. We also, just for the record, I just spoke to Senator Gordon. He'll be joining us a bit later. There is a delegation from the United Arab Emirates that are visiting the Philippine Red Cross headquarters to give a sizable donation to the organization for its relief efforts in the Bicol region. So he'll be a bit late, just for the information of the body, but he'll join us for the amendments later on. Mr. President, next online, we'd like to recognize our distinguished colleague from Panay and the Republic of the Philippines, no other than Senator Risa Ontiveros, to use or avail of the privilege hour. May we recognize her, Mr. President?
Senator Risa, before we do that, Senator Pinlacson is recognized.
I noticed that our resource persons, in the persons of Secretary Dominguez, Secretary Calchua, and the others are still around. Maybe we can excuse them anyway. Interpellations will start tomorrow morning. So maybe we can excuse them in the meantime, Mr. President.
Very good point, Majority Leader. We can
Yes.
inform Secretary Dominguez and the rest.
Absolutely, Mr. President. And also,
Yeah,
just a reminder to our colleagues that the debates will start at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, so that they be ready. So this, the resource persons, Mr. President, may be excused for the day.
Thank you very much, Secretary Dominguez and company. Thank you for joining us. Now, we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros for the privilege hour.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po, Mr. President at mga kasama. In line with the ongoing crackdown on corruption, I'd like to call the attention of the Senate to the sports facilities our government built for the 2019 Southeast Asian Games. Upon closer inspection, there may have been a remarkable degree of collusion in the funding and construction of this project at New Clark City. And I will present some points as to why this should merit a full-scale investigation. First, I believe this partnership has the signs of being a fake joint venture. Second, this has the signs of being financed by a possible behest loan from a government bank. And third, they may have sidestepped public bidding laws, and now the country may have been left with a gigantic white elephant in Central Luzon. Let's discuss my first point, Mr. President, that the government may have entered into a fake joint venture. Sometime in 2018, the BCDA and Malaysian infrastructure developer MTD Capital Berhad entered into what they called a joint venture agreement to construct the SEA Games facilities in Clark. Pero joint venture nga ba talaga ito? Kung JV ito, dapat may ambag ang lahat ng kasali dito. Suriin natin kung ano ang inambag ng partners na BCDA at MTD Berhad. Ang ambag ng BCDA para sa joint venture ay ang lupang gagamitin para sa proyekto. Ang ambag naman dapat ng MTD Berhad ay ang kapital. 8.5 bilyong piso ang dapat na ilalabas ng MTD Berhad para sa construction ng proyekto. Subalit, ayon sa aming pagsasaliksik, mukhang hindi sa kanila nanggaling ang pera. Ang pera ay galing sa Development Bank of the Philippines na siyang nagpautang ng 9.5 bilyong piso sa MTD Berhad. Wala na ngang cash-in ang MTD Berhad, dinagdagan pa ng 1 bilyong piso ang proposal nila. At saan kinuha ng MTD ang pambayad para sa 9.5 bilyong pisong utang na ito? Sa income ba ng project? Hindi. Yang perang inutang ng MTD Berhad sa DBP, BCDA ang magbabayad sa halagang 11.1 billion pesos. Wala na ngang cash in ang Malaysian company, pinatungan pa ng napakalaking interes at tubo. Ang perang dapat sana ay sa iba na lang ginugol ng gobyerno. At saan naman kinuha ng BCDA ang pambayad sa MTD Berhad? Sa income ng mga venue? Hindi rin, dahil wala pang malinaw na income ang project na ito. Kinuha ng BCDA sa bulsa ng taong bayan ang pambayad sa mga Malaysian developer. Kung susuriin ang 2019 budget, binigyan ng DBM ang BCDA ng 9.5 bilyong piso para bayaran ang utang ng MTD Berhad. Then, what is this supposed joint venture for? When BCDA paid the amount to MTD using public funds appropriated in the 2019 national budget. Punong-puno po ito ng bahid ng pagiging peking joint venture. Kaya itatanong ko muli, Mr. President, ano ang ambag ng MTD Berhad dito? Mismong construction lang ang ambag ng MTD Berhad sa di umano'y joint venture na ito. Maging sa Office of the Government Corporate Council o OGCC at sa Commission on Audit o COA para sa kanila, hindi rin joint venture ang pinasok ng gobyerno dito. At habang nangyayari ang lahat ng ito, pinalitan ang hepe ng OGCC at biglang binawi ang una nilang opinyon. Para sa bagong head ng OGCC, above board ang transaksyong ito, taliwas sa dating sinabi ng opisina. This leads me to my second point, Mr. President. Bakit kinailangang mag-participate pa ang gobyerno sa isang joint venture para umiwas sa public bidding at lutuin ang pagpopondo sa project? Paano nakakuha ng 9.5 bilyong pisong loan sa DBP ang MTD Berhad ng ganun kabilis? 28 February 2018 nang pirmahan ang joint venture. And by 21 March, may 9.5 billion pesos na sila. 3 weeks. Very fast. Bakit kaya hindi ito magawa para sa ibang proyekto ng gobyerno? Hindi kaya na naglabas agad ng loan ang DBP dahil nilakad ng PCDA? At ano ang collateral na inilabas para dito? Nasuri ba ng mabuti ang capitalization ng MTD at ang cash flow ng project? Ladies and gentlemen, these questions then lead me to my third point. Hindi ba ito'y may bahid ng tinatawag nating behest loan? Ano ang mangyayari kapag hindi pala kaya ng BCDA paglaanan ito ng budget? Iiyak na lang ang mga depositor ng DBP? At ano ang nabili ng taong bayan sa 9.5 bilyon na kinuha sa ating mga bulsa? Isang sports center na isang buwan pa lamang ginamit at malamang hanggang sa ngayon ay ginagastusan pa natin ng maintenance. Hindi kaya magiging white elephant ang mga facilities na ito? 9.5 bilyong pisong nagamit sanang panglaban sa COVID o kaya ay ayuda para sa kabikulan at iba pang mga rehiyon matapos ang bagyong Rolly. Bago ako magtapos, nais ko ring itanong, nasaan ang DOF, BSP, OGCC, GCG at DBM habang nangyayari ito? Sinunod ba nila ang mga mandato nilang pangalagaan ang interes ng sambayanan? During this privileged speech, I've asked many questions, Mr. President, but it is the public that deserves the answers. Salamat po, Mr. President at mga kasama.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President, with the indulgence of the sponsor, may I just ask a few clarificatory questions?
Certainly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I also would like to apologize because I didn't really catch the entire speech. Actually, I didn't catch most of it except for the picture of the stadium that was built for the Southeast Asian Games. I was being distracted by the chair of the Committee on Finance and the chair of the Committee on Higher Education with their stories about some people. And they put on the record that they are still laughing as I speak. Anyway, on that note, Mr. Chair, so because I cannot ask, I cannot go into detail, no, because I did not know that Her Honor would be taking up this subject. But the project that Her Honor has flashed on the screen is very close to my heart. I am an athlete. I am also a national team player in my youth. And I was there during, I don't think I was there during the, what do you call that? When they, ano ba tawag doon yung corner? Groundbreaking ba yun? When they put the first, I wasn't there then, but I was there when there were only beams, and I continually checked on it in the days to come. Mr. President, this is a world-class stadium built in record time with the advice no less than, if I'm not mistaken, and I can check for the record, World Bank and or ADB on how to finance and how to do this project. Mr. President, the Southeast Asian Games would not have been as successful as it was if we had only the dilapidated stadium of Rizal Memorial of Ultra. May I ask Her Honor if she has seen the place? Because the national track and field team, when they visited it around November, not sure, September, November, before the Southeast Asian Games commenced, they went there for the first time. Does Her Honor know that they cried when they saw the stadium? They cried when they had the opportunity to run on the turf. Bakit? Kasi dun sila nagpa-practice sa napakabulok na stadium. Ganon ang kalagayan. That's how we treat our athletes. Ilan lang ang Manny Pacquiao ng Pilipinas who has had the opportunity to raise himself and have sponsors. But not all sports are like boxing and basketball that have a strong following. Many of these athletes will never even be remembered. But on that day that we won the gold medal, the entire Southeast Asian countries gave their due respect to the Filipino athletes. I am embarrassed that we cannot even honor that. I am embarrassed that we choose to make a political issue out of a world-class facility. Kaya tuloy, wala nang mag-aabalang magpatayo ng matitino at kahanga-hangang mga infrastructure dito sa Pilipinas. Dahil magpatayo ka lang ng maganda, sasabihin na sa'yo na may kalokohan ka. So paano? Puro bulok na lang tayo para walang pumansin. Ganon. Paano magiging white elephant? Madam Sponsor, do you even know what are the conditions of our sports facilities? Para sabihin mong yung world class na yon magiging white elephant? Hindi nyo ba alam na pinasa natin ang National Academy of Sports? And doon, doon magte-training ang mga bata natin, mga future Manny Pacquiao. Paano naging white elephant? Sana naman mag-ingat naman kayo sa mga paratang nyo. Dahil yan na naman ang i-headlines. Di man lang natin binigyan ng konting parangal, konting respeto ang mga national athletes. Na alam nyo ba, kung hindi dahil sa bayanihan to, hindi pa magkakaroon ng allowance. Hindi thanks to PSC yan, thanks to Speaker Alan Cayetano, Congressman Bambol Tolentino, and Senator Sani Angara. So hinahalo ko yung mga mukha ng mga athletes na to dun sa tinatawag niyang white elephant. Kasi that is the only reason why you put up such a structure for people. In this case, for young athletes. So I cannot separate their faces and their names from the structure that you now want people to cast doubt upon. Again, I do not have the details. Wala akong hawak na papel, but I have to stand up for BCDA, for the architects, for the engineers, for every single construction worker that worked overtime. Madam Sponsor, alam nyo ba 24/7 nagtrabaho yon para makadeliver tayo sa Southeast Asian Games? Di ba mas kahihiyan yun na nag-umpisa Southeast Asian Games tapos hindi natapos yon? Nanood ho ba kayo? Nandun ako, nanood ako, nanalo tayo ng mga kung ano-anong event. Yung pole vaulter natin, he claimed the gold. Si EJ Obiena, he was supposed to compete in the Olympics. Pero hindi natuloy yung Olympics. At least, nagka-Southeast Asian gold medal siya, di ba? At least nanalo siya in his own country. Napanood siya ng tatay niya, na coach niya. Ganon ang kalagayan ng mga athletes. Madam Sponsor, yung nanalo ng marathon, taga Cagayan de Oro siya. Umiiyak siya nung nakita ko siya after niya. Hindi niya akalain mananalo siya. Alam niyo bang na-lockdown siya dito for how many months? Hindi nakauwi. O baka sabihin niyo irrelevant na yun. Hindi irrelevant yun. Kasama yon sa mga sakripisyo ng mga athlete. Tapos ngayon, ang kaisa-isang nagawa natin for them, binibigyan pa natin ng mali siya. Kaya yan ang mangyayari sa bansa natin. Puro mali siya tayo, puro paghuhusga.
Mr. President, may I respond now? And
Yes.
the gentlewoman. Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, if the good colleague had caught more or most of my privileged speech, it probably would not have caused the good gentle lady as much distress. Maganda naman talaga yung mga facilities. Nobody's arguing against that. And sinuportahan ko rin yung itinayo natin by law na paaralan para sa ating mga atleta. World class nga naman yung mga facilities kahit tignan lang natin sa mga litrato. Pero baka mas world class pa kung binid out according to law. Yung mga itinanong ko, hindi pa akusasyon pero sinabi ko mga bagay na dapat alamin. We're not merely content of news reports or headlines. They had been, Mr. President, already the subject of opinions by the Government Corporate Council, by the Office of the GCG, the Government Commission on GOCCs, and very importantly, Mr. President, the Commission on Audit, na lagi naman nating ginagamit na gabay para sa pag-oversee ng tamang at optimal na paggamit ng government funds at pati sa pagsisiyasat ng ating mga proposed budget tulad ng ginagawa natin sa ngayon. Maganda talaga yung facilities, but does this excuse the possibility of cutting corners, which I repeat, Mr. President, my speech was not the first to raise questions about, pero may aktual na mga opinyon at observation bago sa araw na ito ng COA, ng GCG at ng Office of the Government, OGCC. And the COA findings themselves were adverse, Mr. President. Kaya it behooves us to consider the possibility of looking into them. Ang aking mga tanong na iniraise ay walang pagbabawas sa pagbibigay halaga natin sa ating mga atleta mula pambansa hanggang lokal. Hindi binabawi ang ating suporta sa education and athletic support sa ating mga athletes at student athletes. Ito ay panay tungkol sa inobserbahan ba o hindi ang mga ayon sa batas dapat na inobserbahan kung totoong joint venture yan o hindi ba dapat sa ilalim ng Build, Operate and Transfer Law, kung kaya't mas mahigpit na bidding. At pag-iwas na ito ay naging bang isang behest loan. At pati yung tanong ko po tungkol sa ito ba ay magiging white elephant lamang, it was precisely in the body of my speech coached in the form of a question. Kasi ayaw natin na ang ganitong world-class or magandang facilities ay mahulog na lang sa ganyang status. Lalo na naging stage na siya ng pagkamit ng glory o karangalan ng ating mga atleta. So ito po, Mr. President, ay mga tanong na maaring unang beses ni-raise natin dito sa loob ng Senado, pero nauna na yung mga constitutional at executive bodies sa ganitong klaseng mga opinyon at obserbasyon. And I think it is well within the mandate of the Senate to also consider looking into these questions, Mr. President.
Mr. President, like I said, I do not have the details. Wala ho akong panahon sa ngayon na aralin yon dahil I am sponsoring CREATE and I am the Senior Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance. Pero pag pinagpatuloy pa ni Senator Risa sa ganitong panahon, na katulad nga ng sinabi ko, yung mga athletes na yan, na lockdown, hindi nakauwi, 10 buwan, walang allowance, 10 buwan, walang allowance. This is their livelihood. And you know, the only thing they have left is their pride. So when we do things like that, we slap them in the face. That is what we do, Mr. President. And when Her Honor chooses to use words like white elephant, you make the people who bother listening to us, if there are still people who bother to listen to us, the more that they question our judgment, the more that they question the things that we do to make those who need more in life, to give them a better life. And that is exactly what that project was all about. Ba't kakainin ba natin yon? Hindi. So, ba't tinayo yun? Kasi nga may purpose. We were in line to sponsor, to host the Southeast Asian Games. Was there enough time to go through all the steps? I don't know. But I am sure there's a logical reason because the president of BCDA is one of those persons that is highly respected in this government. He was pulled in to assist the IATF with the testing, the capacity building, putting up quarantine centers. Hindi mag-aabala si Vince Dizon nang mag-cut short lang ng corners para lang batikusin ng ganito. Ginawa niya yon para patayuan ng may pagmamalaki namang stadium ang Pilipinas. So I leave it at that, Mr. President, but I sincerely regret, inasmuch as we all have the right to stand up here for anything that we want to talk about. We do. Kaya pwede, lahat tayo may right. Pero I sincerely regret na nagagamit ang floor natin para sirain ang napakagandang pangalan ng mga napakagandang mga proyekto na tinayo para lang naman bigyan ng kahalagahan ang ibang sektor ng ating bansa na normally hindi napapansin. They are normally training, like I said, umiyak sila nung tumuntong sila sa tarp nung track oval na yon. Umiyak sila. Sabi nila, wow, ang lambot. Sabi ko, ba't saan ba kayo nagte-training? Ma'am, dun sa track oval na sira-sira na, sa Pangasinan. Ha? Paano kayo nakarating ng Pangasinan? Wala na ho kami mapag-trainingan sa Metro Manila. And then their facilities, Nakatira na rin ako sa Rizal Memorial. As I said, I was a national team athlete. Yung tinirahan ko sa Rizal Memorial noong 1983, awa ng Diyos, ganun pa rin ang itsura. Kung hindi pa natin pinatayo ang track oval sa University of the Philippines, which is open to all, inabot ng mga anak ko, 30 years after I graduated, the same track and football field ng UP. O so siguro si UP, sinundan nila by the letter every single step. Awa ng Diyos, inabot ng 4 na taon. Nag-graduate na yung anak ko, never niya na nakitang yung field na yon. That is how infrastructure projects in the Philippines go along. So if you don't want our people to dream, if you don't take a stand and give honor to what should be honored, the people who did right, then we'll just watch our country crumble because we're just going to be finger pointing every step of the way. And I take offense as an athlete, as a mother of athletes, as a mentor and as a friend of all these athletes, whose sole pride was to be able to see such a structure built in their honor, questioned and castigated in this manner. Salamat po.
Mr. President, hindi ginagamit, but we take the floor to hold people to account. No more, no less. At yung ganyang prinsipyo ay ni-raise na rin ng previous opinions and observations, as I said, ng GCG, ng OGCC at ng COA. And speaking of, was there enough time to do things by the book, to be sure not to cut corners, to observe all the processes under the law? Sigurado, Mr. President, there would have been time. Kasi ayon sa timeline, August 16, 2017 pa lang, ang BCDA ay unang tumanggap ng unsolicited proposal mula sa MTD Capital Berhad for the construction of the National Government Administrative Center o NGAC in New Clark City. So ibig sabihin po, Mr. President, a full 2 years bago na-consummate itong proyekto, there would have been all the time para siguruhin na nasusunod ang mga batas which I have cited in my questions. Yung mga batas tulad ng Build, Operate, and Transfer Law na may kinalaman sa tamang bidding at hindi yung i-label itong proyekto na isang joint venture. Yung batas nga tungkol sa bidding at procurement o new procurement law, yung mga batas sa ating banking sector na dahil sa ating kasaysayan ay nagsisiguro na hindi behest loan ang posibleng makuha sa ganitong mga proseso. At yung ibang mga batas na nagsisiguro na tama at optimally ginagamit natin ang public funds para sa patuloy na pagtataguyod ng ating public infrastructure, including sports infrastructure. So even on that point of time, Mr. President, which the gentle lady mentioned, I would surmise certainly there would have been enough time to do things by the book, observe all the nitty-gritty nitong mga batas na may kinalaman sa ganitong mga proyekto at proseso, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Well, just to add a little trivia. Of course, it's very known fact that I have been a national player of the Philippines since 1976 all the way to 1987. I do understand the points being raised, and more particularly about the athletes. But this one thing that really got my attention in the facilities that were built. It was only then that I found out last Southeast Asian Games, for the reason that our swimmers always have a hard time against the foreign competitors. We always see the Olympic swimming pool. Yun ang ginagamit nila, Olympic-sized swimming pool. Yun ang competition, di ba? Yung pala, mayroon pang isa pa dapat na Olympic-sized swimming pool. other than the one that's going to be used, which we now have. Dati wala tayo. Kasi dapat pala, bago mag-compete, tumitira na dun muna. Nagpa-practice muna dun sa isa. Kaya doble pala yun, pag gano'n. Anyway, the other countries had that before. Singapore and all that. Tayo yung nagtsatsaga sa may mga lumot doon sa ultra. So now, we not only have a top-level Olympic-sized swimming pool for international competitions, we also have an international Olympic-sized swimming pool for the training, not the official pool that is being used. Anyway, just the trivia for the record. So, Majority Leader, Senator Cayetano, go ahead.
Mr. President, since you mentioned that by Olympic standards, you're right, that's a requirement that you have they call it a warm-up pool. So without that, you cannot get the proper accreditation. You will not receive that highest level of accreditation, and you will not be able to sponsor international competitions. So in fact, Mr. President, during the Southeast Asian Games, as it was happen, sa sobrang tuwa nung ating National Sports Association ng Swimming, they already said yes to host this international competition. I'm not sure if it was this year, so baka hindi nga natuloy because of COVID, no? Because they are now qualified to host those kind of swimming events, which we could not do before. Kung familiar kayo sa Rizal Memorial tsaka sa Ultra, hindi ganun ang swimming pool doon. And I'd also like to spread into the record, similarly for the track oval. So the ones that you would have seen, for anyone here who watched it, that track oval is the main track. Pag lumabas ka dun sa stadium, there's another track, Mr. President. Kasi ganun din, it is required that there is a warm-up track. And then, in addition to that, underneath the stadium, not really underneath because same level ng ground, inside the stadium, indoor, merong mga 100-meter din na track. So, pag matagal ka pa, doon ka magwa-warm up sa labas. Pag malapit ka na, pwede ka mag-sprinting dun sa loob. And then finally, in the main. All of this would not be accredited. Again, yung white elephant na inaabala nyo, Madam Sponsor, we can now host international competitions. And that will even be cheaper for our athletes because they don't have to keep going abroad. We can host. It brings glory to the country. Mura para sa ating mga athletes and coaches. May facilities naman doon para matulog. Hindi ko natapos yung kwento ko, pero yung sinasabi kong natutulog ako dun sa dorm, dun sa Rizal, na ngayon ganun pa rin. Now, we have world-class facilities. Nung nakita ng mga athletes, naiyak sila kasi mukha daw hotel yung kanilang kwarto. Ano sasabihin natin ngayon? Dapat hindi mukhang hotel yan. Dapat mukha lang kayong tabi-tabing dormitoryo. Di ba nila karapatan yon? Na humiga dun sa hindi iniipis, na humiga sa magandang kama, na magkaroon ng magandang banyo? So yan ang kini-question natin. Anyway, Mr. President, it's because of you na dinagdag ko to dahil nabanggit niyo yung swimming pool. Dinagdag ko na rin po yung track oval. Thank you.
All right,
No,
the
Mr.
Majority
President, if I may.
Senator Alveros, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, Mr. President, again, if the good gentle lady had caught the greater or most part of my speech, she would have understood what I am saying. It is not our honorable athletes who have poured their hearts out in the pool, on the track, on every terrain and equipment where they raise the flag of our country, who are in question here at all. I celebrate our athletes and they are people of honor and dignity, and certainly bilang mga kababayan natin, they would also not want such questions that have been raised by executive and constitutional bodies to remain unanswered conclusively and cast any shadow of possible corruption on the gold and the silver and the bronze they have brought to our country for the past many years, no? So let us continue to support our athletes, but also to honor them. Let us consider clearing all these questions about possible corruption once and for all. And since the good lady from Taguig mentioned the BCDA chair. Well, even he is facing graft and corruption charges. So why is it something that the Senate could not consider looking into? So let us understand clearly what each one of us expresses when we take the floor to deliver a privileged speech. Klarong-klaro ko, Mr. President, yung mga bodies na inireiterate ko yung mga tanong sa kanila, BCDA, MTD Berhad, at ang DBP. At klarong-klaro rin yung mga batas na itinanong ko kaugnay nitong mga issue. Walang kinalaman po sa ating mga atleta. Untarnished ang kanila pong mga tagumpay para sa ating bansa. Ang kailangan pang klaruhin ay itong mga issue na iniraise na dati ng COA at iba pa at ngayong araw ay niraise ko rin sa floor. At saka lastly, papangit ba ang mga facilities natin kung ibinid out? Hindi rin naman, di ba? Salamat po ng marami, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Okay, Mr. President. I'd like to move to refer the speech of the lady senator to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, and secondary to the Committee on Sports. I so move, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. So deferred.
Moving to lighter matters, Mr. President. I'd like to move to take up Senate Resolution number 525, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure so that we can consider the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the text, the complete text of the said resolution.
Resolution congratulating His Excellency Shinzo Abe for his historic tenure as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister and commending him for his significant contributions to strengthening and broadening the relations between Japan and the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Coco Pimentel, Quirino Coco Pimentel, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Coco Pimentel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President and my esteemed colleagues, a pleasant afternoon to all. On September 15, 2020, His Excellency Shinzo Abe officially ended his premiership with an impressive track record, achieving a historic milestone as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister. His 2 terms as Prime Minister, spanning a total of nearly 9 years, led Japan to stability and prosperity. His economic policies bearing his name, Abenomics, resulted in many successes for the good of the Japanese people. His distinguished political career earned global recognition, and his exemplary leadership gained a place in history. Prime Minister Abe's tenure as Prime Minister of Japan is also historic and significant because of his commitment to maintain a close relationship with the Philippines, which has brought our relations to where it is now, reinvigorated, strong, friendly, and cooperative. Prime Minister Abe has paid great attention and value to Japan's strategic relationship with the Philippines. He continued and deepened this strategic partnership and offered to be a partner in our peace-building efforts, particularly in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, by being involved in various mechanisms like the International Monitoring Team, the International Contact Group, and the Independent Commission on Policing, which has been very supportive in the rehabilitation efforts of Marawi City. Japan has also contributed to the upgrading of our defense security capabilities, particularly in maritime security, in the transfer of defense equipment and technology such as Philippine Coast Guard patrol vessels, high-speed boats, surveillance radars, and TC-90 maritime patrol aircrafts. During Prime Minister Abe's official visit to the Philippines, President Duterte declared that the Philippines and Japan for embarking on the golden age of their relations as Japan pledged official development assistance for the Philippines under the Build program in the amount of 1 trillion Japanese yen for the period 2017 to 2022. Under Prime Minister Abe, the total bilateral trade between the Philippines and Japan has been robust and strong, with Japan being one of the Philippines' top 3 trading partners and the Philippines' consistent top source of investments. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Abe, Japan has showed consistent support to the Philippines even amidst the former's own challenges during this time of the pandemic. It contributed to the Philippines' efforts against COVID-19 by inviting us to participate in the 42-country clinical trials of the antiviral drug Avigan, donating also more than $3 million in emergency assistance coursed through the UNHCR, UNICEF, Red Cross, and granting a 50 billion Japanese yen emergency response loan and other assistance coursed through private donations. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I would like to seek your full support for the immediate adoption of this resolution to congratulate and commend Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for his historic tenure as Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister and for his significant contributions to strengthening and broadening the relations between Japan and the Republic of the Philippines. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues.
Mr. President, can I make a manifestation?
Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized.
We request that we made co-author of the resolution. Thank you very much.
Senator Villar is made the co-author of the resolution, Senator Villanueva, and likewise Senator Angara. All right. Is that okay with you, Senator Pimentel, the main author and sponsor?
Yes, sir. Very much welcome.
right.
Mr. President, may I make a special
Sure,
request to the good sponsor? If we can make all members of the Senate, it's a very laudable resolution. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a very, very good friend to the Philippines and to the Filipinos. If it's okay with the good sponsor and author, can we be made all of us, not all members of the Senate, as co-authors?
I make the motion, Mr. President. If there is no
All right.
objection.
There is no objection. Thank you, Senator Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President.
What
Can we
is the
talk-
pleasure now? Majority Leader, what is
We-
your pleasure?
Yes, Mr. President, we move to adopt Senate Resolution 525, subject to style, making all members as co-authors of the measure with the permission of the author. I so
Any
move.
objection? Hearing none, PS Resolution 525 is hereby adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Thank you very much also to our distinguished colleague, my kababayan and Silingan in Mindanao. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Pia, if unless the crate is ready, Mr. President, you're in the position there to talk to the sponsor if
I was
crate
informed-
is not ready.
I was informed by Senator Pia Cayetano that she is awaiting the finalization of the proposals from Senator Recto, and
Okay.
therefore we are not ready at the
Okay.
moment.
Mr. President, just for a manifestation.
Senator Ralph Recto is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My understanding is that the Department of Finance is not ready.
Yes,
Because
correct,
I'm
correct.
ready, Mr. President.
I stand corrected. Aside from that, Senator Recto is awaiting the proposal. The Department of Finance is not ready. He's correct.
Yes, because I am ready, just for the record. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Recto, for
Mr. President.
Senator Grace po, Mr. President.
Yes,
Senator Grace Po is recognized.
Mr. President. While we are awaiting, perhaps we can begin
Yes,
interpellations per
I was
case.
about to say, Mr. President, since we're not, we're waiting for the Department of Finance. Anyway, I had a conversation, Mr. President, with our distinguished chairperson, Senator Pia Cayetano, this afternoon, and she graciously said if our colleagues are not yet ready, we don't have to rush this measure tonight. We can always come back after we approve the budget on second reading next week. And then the week after that, we will have really nothing. We will have nothing on our plate. We can go back to tackling create so that we can come up with a very good measure that's not rushed, where all our colleagues have been heard and accommodated with, Mr. President. So with that, I would just call for the second item on the agenda, with the permission of the body. I move that we resume consideration, Mr. President, of Senate Bill number 1849 under Committee Report number 116. That is the fifth measure of Senator Grace Poe. I so move, Mr. President.
The motion is to for the consideration, right?
That is correct, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. So considered. You
We are
are
in the
going to. What is the
President.
parliamentary status? May we ask?
We are in the period of interpellation, Mr. President, and I have no member listed to interpellate. I know there are several members who want to provide some amendments. Unless there are those who want to interpellate on the floor, Mr. President.
There are none, but there is a request here by the members of the Senate who are here on the floor to for a few minutes of suspension before we resume Committee Report 116. So
Okay,
if you
Mr.
don't mind,
President,
session is, yeah.
I'm okay with that, Mr. President. Absolutely.
All right. Session is suspended for 5 minutes.
on session.
Okay.
Majority Leader.
So, thank you, Mr.
Majority
President. No, we had a very nice discussion on the side, Mr. President, while you're on break, on the issue on the vaccination, and we're hoping that with the budget deliberations, we can still appropriate additional funds for vaccines for our people, and that's what we were discussing because we were watching the news today, Mr. President, and we were happy to see that Pfizer will be rolling out already by December 50 million doses. They have a 90% success rate. 9 out of 10 of their injected test subjects were had high immunity. So exciting times po. That's why we need some funds inserted to the budget, amendment to the budget for this. And
All right.
with that, yes, moving forward, Mr. President, we'd like to resume consideration of Senate Bill, Senate Bill number 1849, Mr. President.
Yes, I think it's already on the floor.
Still on the floor,
Bill
yes.
1849. So we'll recognize the sponsor.
Senator.
Senator
And
Grace
Mr. President, just to give the parliamentary status, we are now on the period of interpellation. I believe all our colleagues are more ready with the to the amendments. May we recognize Senator Dulon, Mr. President?
The Minority Leader is recognized. You're on mute, Senator Drilon.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Yes, we have signed and reviewed the committee report. The committee report, by and large, would reflect the views of the resource persons that was called by the chairman of the committee during the committee hearings. And it reflects why, as I said, generally, the agreement we arrived at in the committee when this was heard. It is on that premise that I manifest that on my part, Mr. President. I have no questions on interpellation. I will have a few amendments, not very major, but nevertheless we'll propose it. I have discussed this initially with Chairperson, and I have also discussed it just now while we were on the break, discussed it with Senator Resto and Senator Poco for themselves. So once that is the period of amendments, we can propose it, and just for the record, we have no questions on interpretation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Senator
I
Drilon.
think, Mr. President, I think there's something with the static. Am I the only one hearing the static?
Static also, Mr. President. Very loud static.
Static. Will the technical department check into the static that they are hearing? There is nothing being heard here in the session hall except your voices. But anyway, please check on it. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, no other members wish to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, may we open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized in the period of amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 13, section 17, line 18, displays reference to section 3B to 3E. Subsection C shall now read as follows. In the case of GFIs and GOCCs enumerated in section 3E hereof, the DOF, in consultation with the Commission on Audit, COA, shall promulgate the necessary rules and regulations governing the treatment of any loss in their books of accounts as a result of the transfer of the NPAs. I so move, Mr. President.
Any other amendment from the committee?
There are no more committee amendments, Mr. President.
So the Minority Leader, you are ready to propose your amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, with your permission, our first amendment is on page 4. Page 4, line 3 to 4. We propose to delete the phrase starting from which up to the word act, and let me read what we propose to delete, which are to be considered credit impaired and defined as such in the rules and regulations to be issued to implement this act. We propose to delete that, and in its place, place the following: whose principal and or interest have remained unpaid for at least 180 days after they have become past due or any of the events of default under the loan agreement has occurred. That is the proposed amendment, Mr. President. And if you, for the record, we do not believe that we should leave this issue to the rules and regulations as proposed by the central bank and adopted originally by the committee. So we so move as we have indicated, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
First, I'd like to thank Senator Drilon. Of course, I accept this amendment. As we have discussed on the floor so many times, our dismay and disappointed on how IRRs are actually formulated with a very wide latitude given to the agencies. So yes, I accept this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Yeah.
Next.
Yes. Oh.
What is, you may continue, Senator Duro.
Yes, Mr. President. My next amendment is on page 6, lines 25 to 26.
25 to 26.
Lines, page 6, lines 25 to 26. This is on the capitalization of a FISTC, FITS. All right. We delete the phrase on lines 25 and 26. We delete the phrase adequate minimum capitalization in such amount as may be prescribed by the commission, provided that. We propose to delete that and replace it with the following phrase: have a minimum authorized capital stock of 500 million pesos with a minimum subscribed capital stock of 120 million and a minimum of paid up capital of 31,250,000 pesos. This is basically a reproduction of the SPAV bill, and our objection to the way this pressure awarded in the committee report is that there is this, we do not want that discretion to be given to the SEC to fix the capitalization. We want to fix the capitalization under the law so that we only have legitimate FISTS companies rather than fly by night. So that is why we impose a minimum capitalization, which is the same capitalization which was found in this Pablo. We submit that amendment, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Mr. President, I would just like to clarify. The good minority leader from Iloilo meant 125 million as opposed to 120 million.
Yes, I'm sorry. 125 million. I misread it. Yes.
Okay, 125. I accept, Mr. President.
So it's 125, huh?
Yes.
All right. Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 11,
So
line,
nothing on page 7, 8, 9, 10. Page
uh,
11.
yes, page, on page 11, line 29. Delete the phrase, quote, the date of the effectivity of this act, and
Date.
replace that phrase with the approval of its FISTC plan.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 14, lines 13 to 14, delete the phrase as well as other redemption laws.
Shall not apply
I
will
accept,
remain.
Mr. President.
Shall not apply will remain.
Yes, that will remain.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Okay, on page 16, line 12.
12.
Yes. Page 16, line 12. Replace the word as of, delete the word as of, and in lieu of as of, insert the phrase before. And on the same page, also line 12, instead of 2021, place 2022.
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Those are all our amendments, Mr. President. Thank you very much to the good sponsor for accepting our amendments.
All right. Thank you, Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I'd like
Yes,
to thank
Senator
the
Poe.
Minority Leader for very carefully studying not just this measure, but all the other measures that go through the Senate, almost as a one-man team. And I also appreciate his mentorship, as well as Senator Ralph's for this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other amendment? Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. If I may, for the good sponsor, Senator Poe, on page 3, line 1, section 3E, to insert a new subsection, which was discussed in the hearing but does not appear in the committee report. And this is the inclusion of the insurance companies. So an insurance company as defined under Presidential Decree number 612, also known as the Insurance Code as amended.
I accept, Mr. President.
Thank
Where
you
do you
very
want
much,
that placed?
sponsor.
Where do you want that placed on page 3?
That's on page 3, number 6 po.
Number 6.
So after the Land Bank of the Philippines and the Development Bank of the Philippines, we will include the insurance
Yes,
company.
that could go there or number 6, either number 6 or a new number 9. It could also go after the lending company in number 5.
Okay,
I
so
would
subject to
suggest,
5.
I would suggest, Madam Chair, insert it in line 3 after Microfinance NGOs Act, semicolon, and then you include.
So it becomes a new number 7.
Yes, po. Thank you.
Renumbered to 8, 9, and 10.
No,
Thank you, Minority Leader.
What does the sponsor say?
No, I think what Senator Julon is trying to say that included after Microfinance NGOs Act, which is still in number 6. Am I correct?
Included, not a new number?
No. Because
Yeah.
the number 7,
GFI is number 7 eh.
GFI is na yung number 7.
so doon tayo sa number 6.
Oo,
Number 6.
number 6, bago magpuan. I suggest after the a new number 6.
Okay.
No, no. A new number 6 or a new number 7? Because if you say a new number 6, that means it comes after number 5.
Yes.
Opo.
Yes.
7.
No, but
So
I'm
where do you
sorry.
want it? You want it after line 3?
Yes, after Microfinance NGOs Act, then the insurance companies. Is that how we're going to?
No,
Yes.
she wants a new number.
You want a new number?
A new number 6, actually.
No, a new
That's
number
what I was
7.
suggesting, but I leave it to the good sponsor to determine where it's best included.
A new number. I think a new number will be less confusing.
Correct. A new
it will
number
be
7.
It will be a new number 7, and then everything
Right.
will be
And
moved
renumber
accordingly.
the rest. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
I have a second amendment, and this has reference to the lack of agricultural investment in the countryside. And this is on page 4, line 31, section 4, after the Foreign Investments Act, to insert the following, please. That agricultural land transferred from FIS to FISTCs under this act may be considered agribusiness venture agreements, or AVA, under the Department of Agrarian Reform Administrative Order number 04 S 2016 po.
I have, Mr. President,
Minority Leader, yes.
we have reservations with all due respect because this bill is designed to allow our banks to have a robust robust financial condition in anticipation of the difficulties that will go through because of this pandemic. With all due respect to Senator Amy, my impression is that is not consistent with the purpose of this act and may expand the purpose for which we are working on this. So I have reservations if Senator Amy can take a second look at that. We want the bill passed as soon as possible, but unfortunately, we could not concur with the proposal of Senator Amy. We had no opportunity to examine that closely.
Minority Leader, Mr. President, in fact, I am equally, if not more keen than our Minority Leader and the sponsor for the FISTC bill to pass, having been the first sponsor and first author in the Senate. What happened, Minority Leader, if you will recall, is that many foreign investors under the SPAV regime complained that because of land reform rulings, they could not consolidate land holdings and could not invest in the countryside. However, since 2016, a new regime has actually been effected successfully in many cases by DAR. And this is called the AVA, where lands can be consolidated, developed, and rendered productive by both domestic and foreign investors. So I just wanted to give them a way out of the 5-hectare or 7-hectare limitations that have constrained investments in the rural areas.
Mr. President, with all due respect, that is totally alien and is not covered by the subject of the bill, because the subject of the bill is to allow the financial institutions to relieve themselves of the very burdensome NPAs and NPLs. This consolidation, meritorious as it is should be in another law, not in this law, Mr. President, because that will be another subject in the same bill, which we would have problems on. That will be another subject in the same bill.
Yes, okay. Minority Leader and Madam Sponsor, Mr. President, let me withdraw that for further study and proceed to another amendment. Another amendment on page 9, line 1, to insert a new section 12, which was also discussed during the hearing, and this was the sharing of borrower information. I think the inability of banks to share information because of data privacy has been considered a constraint in the SPAV experience of the past. So I wanted to add section 12, sharing of borrower information. Consent of the borrowers of NPL shall not be required for the sharing by the FI of information to the FISTC, including any personal information as defined under RA 10173 or the Data Privacy Act, provided that it is pertinent to the evaluation of the NPLs by the FISTC, and the sharing shall be for the sole purpose of evaluating the NPL. Access shall be restricted to the FISTC's officers, directors, and those who clearly need to know for the purpose of evaluating the NPL that adequate safeguards for data privacy and security are nevertheless established, and that all records, notes, and other written, printed, or tangible materials in the possession of the FISTC embodying or pertaining to the personal information or any part thereto shall be returned to the FI after the evaluation has been concluded. This was the request made by the SPAV as well as other banking institutions to help them derive information and effect the industrial resiliency that we are very keen to accomplish.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, sponsor.
I understand what the senator from Ilocos is saying. On the other hand, I think that the information held by the financial institution itself should be distinguished from what the FIS company can access. I think that there has to be limit to the amount of information that can only pertain to the reference of the sale of that company, like exactly the information that will be relevant to the sale. I think that we have already enough provisions here that require transparency, and I'm sorry, but we weren't given this ahead of time for us to really study the implication of adding another layer for allowing information to be given. So maybe later on when we do the AMLA, that can be incorporated there.
Sure, that's fine, Madam Sponsor, Mr. President. I merely wanted to bring to our attention the request that access to information be given due course, since it had been in the past a major obstacle to the accomplishment of SPAVs. And lastly, on page 10, line 10, section 13, to insert that during the conduct of due diligence, the FISTC is allowed access to borrower data held by the FI. That also should be subject to the sponsor's style or better language, but I was also keen to allow this access to borrower data so that we could broaden and encompass as many NPLs as possible.
What does the sponsor say? You are on mute, Senator.
You're on mute.
Please,
Sorry.
please repeat.
With all due respect, I think that we have already enough information here, because I feel that if companies really want, if the financial institution really want to offload, then the information being requested by the FIS Corporation could be accommodated based on, of course, existing banking laws.
Okay, thank you very much. Those were the amendments I suggested. If further study could be made for their inclusion, I'd be very grateful. That will be all, Mr. President, Madam Sponsor.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Marcos. All right, Majority Leader.
Are there any other? I do not see any more amendments, proposed amendments. Senator Ralph, was it all incorporated already, your amendments with the amendments of Senator Drilon?
Yes, I'd like to thank Senator Grace for accepting all my amendments during to begin with in the committee report. So thank you very much to the chairman of the committee. Thank you, Senator Grace.
Thank you.
No
Thank
more
you for-
amendments. Majority
Yeah,
Leader.
Mr. President, thank you for the efficiency of both the offices of Senator Recto and Drilon for incorporating their amendments early on in our committee report. And thank you also to Senator Marcos for calling attention to the other provisions that need to be refined.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, there are no more amendments. We move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1849 under Committee Report number 116. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill 1849 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, the good news is this is a certified measure. If we have the numbers on the floor and in the online virtual session, we can actually approve this today, Mr. President, and get it ready for the BICAM. Would you like to
We
ask
will ring the
for?
bell.
Yes, maybe we can ask our colleagues to join us because we will be suspended for quite a while. We will not be able to call for a third reading vote
Yeah, we
probably
will,
after the budget.
We will. The secretariat is directed to ring the bell.
Yes, and then I'll also ask our staff my chief of staff to call the offices of our colleagues.
We move to suspend for 5 minutes.
Or for 2 minutes, Mr. President. Siguro
2 minutes. 2 minutes, yes.
The session is suspended for two Senate minutes. a storm surge alarm over here. So let's proceed. Majority Leader.
Okay. Yes, Mr. President, with that, I move to approve this on third reading, this being a priority certified measure by the President. Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the priority measure, the letter, the priority measure.
No objection. The Secretary will read the
Certification, Mr. President.
the certification, the official certification, and then proceed with the roll call vote.
16 October 2020, Senator Vicente C. Soto III, Senate President, the Philippine Senate, Pasay City. Mr. Senate President, pursuant to the provisions of Article 6, Section 26, Paragraph 2 of the 1987 Constitution, I hereby certify to the necessity of the immediate enactment of the attached Senate Bill number 1849 entitled An Act Ensuring Philippine Financial Industry Resiliency Against the COVID-19 Pandemic in order to strengthen financial initiatives towards national economic recovery and maintain the stability of the financial sector amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Very truly yours, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao,
Yes.
Pangilinan,
Yes.
Pimentel III, Poe,
Yes.
Recto,
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Tolentino,
Yes.
Villanueva, Villar,
Yes.
Zubiri,
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
Yes. Si Bong, bumoto yun, ha? With 18 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, Senate Bill 1849 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President,
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, I would like to thank my colleagues for giving me for accommodating this priority measure and for giving me an easy time, not because you like me, but because you know that this is important for our economy and for the businesses and for our banks to maintain a healthy financial situation in our country. I would also like to thank I'm very confident about this bill because this has been scrutinized by the experts in among our colleagues, Senator Drilon and Senator Ralph Recto, and I would like to thank them for their guidance, and of course for my other colleagues also for your support in a timely manner. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Majority Leader.
May we recognize Senator Drilon, Mr. President, our minority
Senator
floor leader.
Frank Drilon, the Minority Leader, is recognized.
You're on mute,
Well, yes.
Mr. Minority,
For
sorry.
for the record, Mr. President, let me spread into the record my commendation for Senator Grace Poe for the hard work that she has that she had put into this measure. Very important measure given the fact that just today we received news of the further contraction of our economy by 11.5% for the third quarter. Which is very difficult, which makes recovery more difficult, and therefore we would expect the need of the banking sector for assistance in terms of being able to maintain a healthy financial sector of our society. And this bill is precisely designed for that in anticipation of the difficulties that our banking sector will encounter as a result of the pandemic. It is in that sense, Mr. President, that we did cooperate and supported the efforts of our committee chair in order to come up with a measure that will achieve the purpose for which it was proposed. Again, our congratulations to Senator Poe for this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Drilon, the Minority Leader. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join our colleagues, Senator Drilon and the others, congratulating Senator Poe. A job well done, ma'am. At least another feather in the cap of the Senate. This is being a certified measure. We're able to pass it before our break for Christmas, so we're very happy. So, Mr. President, may I recognize Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much. This is just a short manifestation. First of all, we'd like to congratulate our dear colleague, Senator Grace Poe, for passing this very important measure. And secondly, Mr. President, may I be allowed to submit into the record my explanation of vote, Mr. President, on this particular measure. And again, I congratulate our dear colleague, Senator Grace, and our colleagues in the Senate for passing this very, very important measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, we could see that if we work as a team, both minority and majority, we can get things done for our country, especially in this time, this difficult time of the pandemic where everyone is affected. And kudos to all. And I'm so happy to be part of this very good 18th Congress. Mr. President, I believe the crate is still not ready, and we've discussed this earlier that possibly all amendments to be refined can be submitted while we're discussing the budget. And then right after the second reading of the budget next week, Mr. President, while we are waiting for the amendments of all our colleagues, we can tackle the crate measure once more. So we don't have other measures online. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian had already asked me permission if he can just tackle these measures. These are all mostly local measures, Mr. President, during the lull on the budget deliberation. So with that, Mr. President, we don't have any other matters to take up. With the permission of the body, I move that we suspend session until 10 o'clock in the morning of Wednesday, November 11. And before we suspend, Mr. President, we just want to remind our colleagues on the items tomorrow. We have a 10 o'clock. Yes, we have yes, Mr. President, we're just
with your indulgence, please. I
yes,
beg
Mr.
your
President.
indulgence. The Secretariat is reminding us that there is a second additional reference of business before we adjourn. If you don't mind.
Okay, Mr. President, I withdraw my motion to adjourn and move for the second reference of business. Move to proceed.
All right. Thank you. The Secretariat will proceed with the second additional reference of business.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 1908, an act granting hazard pay to support workers in public hospitals during the public health emergency as declared in Presidential Proclamation number 1021 series of 2020 and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Recto.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Finance.
Senate number 1909, an act extending the availability of selected appropriations in the General Appropriations Act of 2020 and the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act under Republic Acts 11465 and 11494 respectively, as well as the corresponding allotments intended for response, recovery interventions for the COVID-19 pandemic and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate number 1910, an act providing expanded employment security for workers and defining responsibility of employers with respect to exposure to COVID-19, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Labor.
Senate number 1911, an act requiring the use of plain language in all government-issued public advisories, notices, announcements, and similar documents intended for public dissemination and distribution, introduced by Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committees on Civil Service and Public Information.
Senate number 1912, an act enhancing the resiliency and adaptability of farmers to adverse weather and climate events by institutionalizing the use of crop climate calendars, equipping farmers for climate-sensitive decision-making, and providing access to localized weather and climate information, introduced by Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committees on Agriculture, Science and Technology, and Finance.
Resolution, Special Resolution number 561, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the implementation of Republic Act Number 10361 entitled An Act Instituting Policies for the Protection and Welfare of Domestic Workers with the end in view of ensuring that the kasambahays are protected from abuse and maltreatment of their employers. Introduced by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committee on Labor.
PS Resolution Number 562, Resolution directing the Senate Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the low passing rate in the career service, professional, and sub-professional examinations of the Civil Service Commission, CSC, introduced by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committee on Civil Service.
PS Resolution Number 563, Resolution expressing support for and reaffirming the continuing recognition by the Republic of the Philippines of the Sultanate of Sulu as a leading and unifying institution of the indigenous cultural communities in the Sulu Archipelago, its dependencies, territories in North Borneo, and other historically and legally linked areas, and urging all relevant branches and agencies of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines to do certain necessary and useful acts to further support the constitutional right of the indigenous cultural communities to preserve the culture, traditions, and institutions of the Sultanate of Sulu and ensure the long-term economic, social, and cultural well-being of the people, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution Number 564, Resolution directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry aid of legislation into the fraudulent overpriced fertilizer contracts with the Department of Agriculture under its stimulus program, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Agriculture.
PS Resolution Number 565, Resolution directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the sustainability, legality, and possible environmental and public health hazards of the 389 million peso Manila Bay Beach Nourishment Project of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and the possible liability of erring government officials, introduced by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committee on Environment.
PS Resolution Number 566, Resolution directing the Senate Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to revisit the mandate, powers, and functions of the National Power Corporation with respect to the management and rehabilitation of watershed areas in the country, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committees on Energy and Environment.
PS Resolution Number 567, Resolution urging the proper Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the loan obtained by MTD Capital Berhad from Development Bank of the Philippines to finance the construction of the sports facilities at New Clark City used for the 2019 Southeast Asian Games and to assess whether there may have been lapses on the part of regulatory bodies vis-a-vis the transaction, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers, Sports, and Finance. Majority Leader.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. President. Thank you to your secretary. With that, Mr. President, I move to suspend session until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Wednesday, November 11, 2020, to tackle our General Appropriations Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. The session is suspended until 10 a.m. in the morning of Wednesday, November 11, 2020.
Bye, everyone.